Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you about PUBG eSports. This one got delayed a little bit because I came back from the Invitational straight into the Call of Duty beta and some other stuff, but I'm finally ready to talk about it because PUBG seems to want to be an esport. They hired an esport manager / developer for their staff. There's a partnership with ESL, and the Invitational was obviously a test run. It was explained to us as a fun invitational tournament for streamers and YouTubers, but I'm pretty sure that we were guinea pigs for what would soon become PUBG eSports. I assume that, like most games, PUBG wants eSports as a secondary revenue driver. So they have $10 million in sales, but after taxes and Steam's fees and whatnot, that's probably a little bit less than $200 million in revenue, which sounds like a ton, but that means $200 million to keep a growing game alive forever. Servers are incredibly expensive for a game with 1 million people playing. You have staff, you have artists, you have a lot of stuff going on. And while yes, it's a lot of money, it won't last forever. So like most game companies, they decided to monetize the forever and at least a lot of the fixed costs through crates and microtransactions. And you know, crates and microtransactions, the sales driver there is esports, big events, things like that. So an esports scene would be very healthy for PUBG from a financial standpoint. And in a different sense, esports could be good for PUBG, or esports makes sense on PUBG because it's one of the most fun games to watch, period. That's one of the keys to its success, is that streaming PUBG and watching people play it is incredibly fun. Gunfights, positioning, and tactical play all require a very high degree of skill. It's one of the highest learning curve games I've ever gotten into. However, I think PUBG is a long way from being an esport, and I mean a really long way. The game is still in early access, so there's a lot of small bugs associated with it. There's a lot of crashes, there's graphical glitches, even on LAN things go crazy, and there's desync and whatnot. And no small amount of PUBG skill is simply knowing how to play around the bugs. What zones am I not allowed to lean in because it's bugged out, the crouch jumps, going through broken windows, little parkour areas that insta-kill you, how to work the head glitches and gun glitches and whatnot. Also, water doesn't do damage, or you can't take damage underwater, which is kind of crazy. There's a lot of PUBG skill that's just about avoiding bugs. And I think that the PUBG Gamescom Invitational structure was wrong for a lot of reasons. And just take this as a guy that was there that played. Number one is that kills were not rewarded highly enough. I get it that the theme of this game is survival, and if you survive to the very end of the game, you should be rewarded more than other players. However, it was so much so that you would have had to get over 100 kills to equal a single first place finish. If I'm not mistaken, Vicstar's YouTube squad got something like 7th place, killing nobody during the entire squad's event and just like loading meds onto one guy to heal in the gas. Every team played extremely conservative to boost up their placings as high as possible. Nobody would pick fights. Nobody would reveal locations. I watched teams just like let whole other teams walk by them. They could have obliterated them, but they just let them walk by completely unnoticed because they were afraid of revealing themselves because they were hoping to get a good circle. This made it not fun to watch, and it didn't really resemble the home game at all. I feel that there needs to be some reason for teams to pick fights with each other, some point, some placing, something like that, so that it's a lot more fun to watch and so that it's not so oddly campy. On the same token, gas timing and damage is too weak for an esport. It might be just fine at home, that might be the perfect balance, but for an esport with high skill players, it was not properly balanced. The gas healing strategy is one of the best ones at the tournament. You can sit in level 1 gas for about 5 minutes with no heals and not die. You can sit in level 2 gas for I think it's 3 minutes with no heals, and if you do have heals, you can survive in the gas for a shockingly long time. It moves relatively slow at early levels, and the timers are pretty long too. In some of the later games, we played for almost 20 minutes before a single person died. There would be 70 people alive in a super tiny hill, where normally at home there would be 20. I think for esports, the gas needs to move quicker, the timers need to be shorter, and it needs to hurt a lot more because, well, point number one, people weren't fighting. They were very campy, and it wasn't super entertaining to watch. We need to have reasons to fight people, and we need to squeeze them together closer, faster, and be more punishing for those that avoid it. I think we also need to play more matches matches to smooth out randomness. At the end of the day, PUBG has a lot of RNG associated with it. There's where you land, what direction the plane flies, how good your loot is, where the hills are, and things like that. And if you look at placings, on average, yes, pro players did do better than YouTubers. That makes sense. They can aim better. They have practiced this for a super long period of time. They know how to get positions. They know what's important. However, no small part of this game or the tournament was simply getting good hills. When I played 9 total games over the course of the weekend. No, it was 12. I take that back. And I think I might have gotten decent hills in about 2 of them. In almost every single game, I was super far out outside the hill, and every time it would move away from me, and I had to fight into the safe zone and just go kilometer after kilometer. It was absolutely punishing when you're having to run past Luminosity and Cloud9 and T-Noble and people like this. And I was very jealous when other people would be safe 2, 3, 4 times in a row and not have to run across the entire map, and it made it much easier for them to outplace me. On top of this, there's RNG guns. Sometimes you get great guns. Sometimes I looted very high value areas and got literally nothing. I had no meds sometimes. To an extent, the landings and where the airplane moves are random, though you can parachute to a lot of place. And this amount of randomness isn't normal or healthy for an esport. So if you're going to have a lot of randomness, the way to kind of pick the skill out of it is to play more matches, because on average, in the long run, high skill players are going to do better over a bigger sample of matches. In a small sample of matches, 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4, the randomness of the hills and the guns can let some teams that probably should not have deserved to win, but if you're playing 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games, the cream will rise to the top and the good players will place better. There's a downside to this. At a point, especially near the end of the tournament, teams could see that it would be impossible, especially if they've played bad, impossible to win, impossible to place well in a tournament, impossible to get any money. And once it's impossible for them to achieve their goals, they're likely to start trolling, not trying, playing oddly. There has to be some incentive along the way to keep going, even if it's everybody gets participation money from last place all the way up to first, so that even the people at the bottom of the bracket are fighting to get just a little bit more money out of it. It would have to be much, much lesser so that the first place prize would be bigger. It's just an idea. It does have flaws. And finally, the spectator camera was a mess. Out of all the gunfights, very few of the important ones were broadcast, especially on day 1. They improved a lot for day 2, 3, and 4, but there was a lot of the game you didn't get to see. And on top of that, the casters didn't have controls of the cameras either, so it was very hard for them to keep up. And don't get me wrong, there are major challenges to spectating 80 people. They built a spectator mode just for this event. There's 80 people in the game. That's a ton of perspective, a ton of GoPros, a ton of gameplay, a ton of stuff to sync up, a ton of places to guess where gunfights are going to be. Some people would camp side by side with each other and not fight forever, and you don't really know when they are and aren't going to be doing that. So there's major technical challenges there, but I still think this could be majorly improved so that more gunfights are actually spectated and it's more fun to watch. ESL and Bluehole had a very interesting idea by requiring everyone to stream so that all perspectives were visible all the time, and I think that's something they should do again. It eats up a lot of bandwidth and there are some technical problems associated with that, but having all the players in your game stream means that you are always allowed to see everybody's gameplay, which is just downright awesome. However, I think that they could improve the stream if they copied the Call of Duty method and had an Alpha, Bravo, Charlie stream, maybe even a map stream of just the map, just a couple of different streams. So Call of Duty would do it where the big main event was Alpha, and some of the other people playing in the bracket that weren't as important, we will say, were on Bravo or Charlie. You could do a similar thing with PUBG with your Alpha stream, but then you could have Bravo, Charlie, Delta, whatever, focusing on different groups so that people could spectate those groups if they wanted to. It does split up viewers a bit on Twitch, so you might not get that prestigious #1, but it would allow people to see more of the game being played and definitely improve the caster tools in the long run. There's some other ideas that people have put out that I think are terrible ideas for PUBG eSports. I've heard that there should be played with less people, that it should just be 10 teams of 4, or maybe even less, like 20 total players. I think that would be a terrible idea. I think that would make it very boring, and it would make it completely unrepresentative of the game at home. Some people have suggested making smaller maps. I think smaller maps would be boring. I know the next map is going to be smaller, and that would definitely make people fight each other earlier, but if you squeeze the maps and to the point where it doesn't represent the map at home, or if you take a big map and start sectioning off areas areas, then again, you're doing a disservice to the game. Insta-kill gas is probably too punishing. While I do think the gas is definitely too weak as it is, there's a lot of people that wants the gas to just instantly kill you or electrocute you, and I think that's way too punishing, and people should be able to come out of the gas even if they're taking damage. Some people have suggested spawning with rifles or SMGs, and I don't think that's a very good idea because it removes the scavenging mechanic from the game, and it makes everybody automatically have good guns, which isn't quite as fun to watch. And there's another crazy idea where they think that you should just spawn anywhere on the map. No plane, you just pick and spawn. There's no skill in that. You take away the diving skill, the landing skill, the parachuting skill. That's a cool mechanic to enter the game. That is a cool spawn mechanic, and that should definitely stay. And the further you get away from the home game, the less successful esports will be. At the end of the day, what you want is an esport that resembles the game that people play at home quite a lot, but at a higher skill level, so that people that maybe have never heard of PUBG eSports can tune in and understand what's going on. Guys, that's it for this video and my opinions. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out. For all the best tips, information, and strategies, check out the Ultimate Utility Companion app for PlayerUnknown'S Battlegrounds. Links available in the description for both iOS and Android.